Doctoral dissertation writing in the social sciences, a generalist research agenda. Table of contents. A preliminary pages. 1 title page, title of the study, maximum of 20 words. 2 certification page, a declaration by the candidate that he is the author of the work. This may be witnessed by the supervisor or dissertation committee as the case may be. Signing by the HOT and external examiner is also desirable. 3 abstract page, short and precise. Summary of the entire work from brief introduction to explain rationale, indicate aim, main objectives, research questions, and method of research, research design, data collection method, sampling technique, and size, response rate, variables of study, method of analysis, result. Link to existing theory, main finding, major conclusion, recommendation, contribution to knowledge and practice. Avoid acronyms. Plus keywords, maximum of 360 to 500 words. 4 dedication page, gives opportunity to express gratitude to dear ones. 5 acknowledgement page, acknowledging contributions of people who provided assistance or helped in the preparation of the study. 6 table of contents. The table of contents lists the chapters, topics, and subtopics together with their page numbers. E.g. Chapter 1/1.1 Topic/1.1.1 Subtopic. 7 List of figures, list of titles of figures, graphical representations or maps, together with their page numbers. Figures in Chapter 1 are numbered sequentially, e.g. Fig.1:1, Fig.1:2, and so on. 8 List of tables, list of titles of tables, tabular representations, together with their page numbers. Tables in Chapter 1 are numbered sequentially, e.g. Table.1:1, Table.1:2, and so on. 9 List of symbols and abbreviations. The symbols, abbreviations, nomenclature, and terminology or operational terms that are used in the text must be listed down accordingly, and alphabetically. 10 List of appendices. Titles of appendices placed in the supplementary section. Consists of research instruments, raw data, maps, photos, computer programs, graphics, and other materials that can provide additional information. They are labeled as Appendix A, Appendix B, and so on. Main body. B. Introduction, why the research is essential to be done. 1.1 Consideration of the research problem area in a wider context to create a research space to justify the need for the study in the context of what is already known. Why do you need to undertake the study and of what importance? 1.2 Rationale/motivations. Example, 3 ways you can indicate the rationale of the study. 1. Provide evidence that this problem must be addressed or things are likely to get worse. 2. Cite previous studies in that locality that indicate the problem is getting worse. 3. Indicate that the lack of studies is serious, neglected area, and it is important to fill this gap. Gap arises also where there are conflicting findings also. 4. Innate curiosity to discover new facts, theories, principles to understand an explanation of social phenomenon. Let the readers understand the urgent need for a solution to the problem, what has gone wrong, and the potential threats. Motivations could arise from a desire to understand the cause-effect relations and discover new theories, facts, principles, generalizations, concepts, or other findings. 2. Curiosity and necessity. 3. Understanding and explanation of social phenomena, emerging problems and threats. Indicate the focus of the study, e.g. process industries, office property, etc. The major expected outcomes. 1.3 Research problem. The research problem is expressed from the research gap and vice versa. What problems remains to be subjected to research and what problems are now emerging? Problem identification. What is the specific problem which the researcher wants to solve/explain? The title must directly reflect this problem. The title, knowledge or research gap, aim of study, objectives, theoretical and conceptual frameworks must relate with this problem. Problem-related theories, theoretical framework, selection of variables of interest, relationships for operationalization, conceptual framework. Base problem statement on facts already known, existing theories or indications or speculations obtained from past theories. Show why it is a problem and prove the existence of the problem. You may use findings from other research/newspaper cuttings/journals/opinions from experts/other credible sources. 3 ways to prove the existence of problem. 1. Provide empirical evidence of the existence of the problem. 2. Cite findings that are inconclusive or contradictory. 3. Prove that there is lack of studies in the area. Show the implication of the problem's existence to the general and more serious problems and the necessity for solution. The research gap is articulated into a problem statement. Problem often indicate a research gap that should be filled. Note: research gaps can be obtained from a. Future work specifications. b. Through literature mapping. c. Experts' resolutions. d. Limitations contained in various related studies. e. Conflicts in research findings. f. Unsolved local and international challenges. g. Areas of visible neglect. h. Areas detected from literature mapping. Problem must match the research objectives and research questions. Indeed, the literature gap gives an idea of what research questions to ask. So research questions are literature-driven. 1.4 Research aim and objectives. The aim of the research is the goal that the researcher is set to achieve, e.g. finding solutions to the stated problems or a relationship that exists between the problem and other problems. The project title often indicates the aim because it establishes a link with the problem. The objectives, purposes, of the study are the modes or strategies for the attainment of the goal based on the stated problem. The objective could be to find the relationship, to test a model, to determine critical factors, etc. Let's use high-level verbs and avoid repeating the verbs. Notes: purposes, objectives, of study must be such that the writer must investigate all in his study. The objective could be to find the relationship, to test a model, to determine critical factors. Objectives of study, research questions/hypotheses should be subscript to form the core of the questionnaire or other research instrument. Objectives must match the results and the discussion. 1.5 Research questions/hypothesis. can be used interchangeably in a study depending on whether questions or statements are best suited to obtain results. However, they can be used together where RQs would suit some inquiries and hypothesis would suit others, within a study, or where a quantitative study is triangulated by a qualitative study, in a mixed-mode study. Otherwise, they perform the same functions. State all the null hypotheses or the research questions only, based on the problem. 1.6 Significance, importance, justification, or relevance, of study. The primary question is who will benefit and how. A. What will be the contribution to knowledge, research, and practice, of this study if successfully carried out? B. Explain why you have asked each of the research questions. This measures the value to others. 1.7 Scope, delimitation, of the study. A. The researcher limits the scope of his study so that he can properly focus on just 1.7 Scope, delimitation, of the study. A. The researcher limits the scope of his study so that he can properly focus on just one or two aspects of a wide problem area. B. Points out what aspects of the study will be covered and what aspects will not be covered. 1.8 Methods. Outline of materials and methods to be used, including sources of primary and secondary data collection. 1.9 Operational definition of terms. 1.10 Defining variables by how it is measured in your study, constructs. 2.0 Review of literature, what is already known and what is not yet known. Literature review reveals the state of knowledge and research gaps in a study area. The purpose is to set out what research, knowledge, arguments, and ideas have been established in your study area, their strengths and weaknesses, and how your research aligns with, supports or challenges previous research. Prepare a concept map, shell and inner review, and literature mapping, knowledge gaps. The inner shell of the LR must, 1. Relate directly to the RQs, 2. Identification of all the factors and variables of study. 3. Indicate the selection of the factors and variables used in the study. Justifying the selection criteria. 4. Main issues in the research title/problem. 5. Other supplementary issues. 6. Collect results into an overview of what is and what is not yet known. 7. Identify arguments and areas of controversy. 8. Formulate questions that need further research. A. B. Brief introduction. Relevant theories, critical review of what other researchers have said about the items of discussion that has relevance to the problem being studied. It is a critical assessment of the relevant literature, providing information on problems under study, their theories and hypotheses, materials and techniques used in their researches, and their findings. See your critical response to the review. Do you agree or differ with the researcher's views? Intellectually argue the acceptance or refutation of various authors' arguments, describing and analyzing what has been written by them. Appraise them with a view to identifying the following: similarities in the statement made by previous writers, common issues raised by them, differences and contradictions of statements made by them, criticisms made by them. Make notes for the discussion section on theoretical or conceptual review, literature findings, and further studies. What is the direction of research in this field? D. Structure of the literature review. Major subheadings: historical background/introduction and a review of the trend of thought in that area of knowledge in historical perspective. Reviewing at a broader level of related concepts and the most current literature in that field. The type of literature that will show that his knowledge of that field is very current. Show how each section of the review contribute to or challenges the theme of the study. Main issues: theoretical framework. The theoretical framework is the structure that can hold or support a theory of a research study for testing. Specifically, direct literature review to reflect your research questions, and a researcher may explore all the literature on nature and characteristic of each of the variables relevant to his study, and relevant theories. Operationalize and connect the variables into a framework model. Hybrid of theoretical framework plus conceptual framework is known as analytical framework. Theoretical framework, from theory; conceptual framework, from concepts. I. State the theories or findings that relates the variables, constructs, / state the theories or findings that connects the variables mentioned above. Theoretical framework. Identify the variables involved in the study and their connections derived from theories, so that the theory can be tested. 2. State the theories or concepts that relate the variables, constructs, / state the theories or findings that connects the variables mentioned according to the understanding of the researcher. 3. Draw the appropriate framework, model, a diagram connecting the variables based on the literature theories, or concepts based on the understanding of the researcher. Eventually make the framework a reference point for the discussion and compare it to the findings to confirm, extend, refute or generate a new theory. Summary: all the research works reviewed. Compare and contrast authors / evaluate methodologies. Highlight the gaps, i.e. areas not previously covered by literature, or important variables not previously studied, or where the socio-economic status of population of previous studies has changed and a new research is required. Gaps / novelty must relate with the research problem. The literature review should be comprehensive and include recent publications. It must point to the research problem and support the research objectives and research questions. Relate literature findings to the study. The research should show how his own study relates to or derives from the previous work done in that area. He does this by focusing on the relationship between the past studies reviewed and the researcher's present study. Show where the variables to the study were derived. Provide a summary. 3.0 Methodology: how the research was conducted. Research methods are the tools, techniques, or processes by which researchers obtain data. Methodology is about the principles that guide our research practices, and therefore explains why we are using certain methods or tools. Methodology must address the problem. A brief outline of what the reader should expect in this section. B. Research design. For quantitative research design, deducing from theory, experimental, laboratory, field, measurements, asks how many, how often, what is, when, where, proceeds from set definitions, theory, to validation of the theory, deductive, cause and effect, deals in numbers, reality is objective. And researcher is independent from what is being researched, value-free and unbiased, formal, context-free, categories isolated before study, theoretical framework and review, accurate and reliable through validity and reliability, impersonal, generalization leads to prediction and understanding. Metric data, interested in quantities. There are hypotheses to be verified. Experimental and survey techniques. Close-ended questions. For qualitative research design, induce to theory or induce theory from observation, case study, grounded theory, ethnography, phenomenology, action research, and field research, asks why and how, not to measure, but to explain and explore in order to understand. Proceeds from data to theory, inductive, deals in qualities rather than numbers, reality is subjective, constructs knowledge, researcher interacts with what is being researched, value-laden and biased, informal, context-bound. Mutual simultaneous shaping of factors, categories identified during research process, conceptual framework and review, patterns, theories developed for understanding, data codes, and interpretation. Accurate and reliable only through verification with past theories and / or triangulation with present perceptions of the phenomenon. Findings are related to past theories at discussion or conclusion level, non-metric data, interested in qualities, no generalization. There are research questions to be answered. Interview and observation techniques. Open-ended questions. Mixed mode, hybrid of the two in a dissertation. See research questions, or statement of hypothesis, whichever is desirable. State null and alternative hypotheses, tentative or testable statement about relationship between the variables that the investigator is interested in. All research questions must be answered, and hypotheses, where used, must be verified by the results and analysis. Research questions are asked with what, are, does, is, should. Notes. 1. Objectives of study must be to achieve the aim of research. Research questions / hypotheses derive from objectives, and are such that when answered / verified must fulfill the objectives. Hence, logically, research questions or hypotheses should be subscript to form the core of the questionnaires or other research instruments. 2. We must justify asking each of the research questions asked in relation to the overall study aim and objectives. This adds value of the study. The research questions must be sequential. 3. You must attach methods used to each of the objectives and state the method clearly, e.g. methods for objective 1, methods for objective 2, and so on. D. Sample design procedures. Unit of study, what or who is being studied. Size of sample, know of population elements that are selected for study, survey or sample population. Rationale for choosing the size, use formula, effect size alpha sample size equals power of the test, 0.8, confidence interval approach. Data collection instrument, observation, interview, experiment, and survey questionnaire. E-data screening and report the psychometric tests. Face and content validity tests, reliability test from a pilot study, data screening for normality, bootstrapping, linearity, homoscedasticity, convergent, discriminate and cross-boundary validities depending on whether data is metric or non-metric. Factor structure and construct validity, exploratory factor analysis and confirmatory factor analysis. F. Data processing. Frequency count, coding, and other statistical computations and quantitative analyses. Treat missing values and outliers. Nodes for qualitative data. These analyses are required for testing hypotheses or answering research questions as the case may be. G. Method of analysis. The descriptive analysis. Check that statistical assumptions are met for statistical analysis to be used. Inferential statistical tools used. Notes. Where statistical assumptions are not met, the generalized linear models should be used rather than the general linear models. F. Discussion of the methodology. A critical review of the methodology, strengths and weaknesses, advantages and disadvantages, benefits and justifications for using the methods. Known imperfections in the effort of the researcher, especially in the sampling sizes and methods. Other factors such as time, funds, access to classified information, site accessibility, and nature, and other problems that may limit the scope for generalization. Known limitations of the methodology. I. The study area. 4.0 Results and analysis. What happened? Layout of the entire chapter. A. Results. Respondents' characteristic and classifications, frequency distribution given in tables. Presentation of descriptive data, results, from questionnaire responses, that would provide answers to research questions or hypotheses. Take research questions or hypotheses one after the other and report indications for discussion in 4D below. E.G. Results and discussion for Objective 1, result and discussion for Objective 2, and so on. B. Analyses. Analysis of data is made with reference to the purpose of study, the research problem at hand, and the hypotheses or research questions. Result testing, choice of statistical tests, accept or reject hypothesis. Presentation of findings from field survey responses. I.E. From the responses to each of the questions in the questionnaire or other instruments, what are the indicated findings for each of the analyses and results presented? Summary of findings. Summary of very important and revealing aspects of every chapter. Identify the major findings according to hypotheses or research questions, and all your indications as stated under each descriptive presentation, possibly from findings, must be in relation to objective/hypotheses/research questions. Link your findings to the theoretical framework to confirm or refute it, or generate your own theory. This is done by discussing the findings in relation to the theoretical or conceptual framework developed for the study from theories or the researcher's generated concepts/understanding from the literature. This is the measure of your study's internal validity. Classification. Make a claim, provide evidence to support the claim, describe the evidence and interpret the evidence logically. Theory testing. Hypothesis testing equals claim equals research statement equals research findings equals theory. 5.0 Discussion, interpretation and evaluation of findings. What the results or findings mean, so what? The purpose of discussion is to discuss the findings or outcomes of the research in relation to the results obtained and relate the findings to the research problem. Supplementary analyses of related issues could be made here to complement the evaluation. For instance, where actual numerical analysis was not possible. However, the issue must have been listed as a research question originally. Short discussion of findings from the literature review. Summarize your findings, and meaning of the results. Evaluation of findings. Evaluation of findings. Evaluation of findings should be done in this manner: assemble all the interpretations in 4a above, and relate to postulations, principles, relationships, and established theories in the literature review, compare and contrast. Point out any exceptions, lack of correlation and unsettled points, then, react to the observed findings and explain why they occurred, or varied with those hypothesized, agreement or contrasts with previously published research findings, any theoretical implications. State what is expected according to previous researches or established theories, and what is not expected. How is your study different from others? Compare your findings with other studies, i.e., show how your findings are similar but different from others. What are the other ways of interpreting the findings? Discussion and debates on findings focused on objective/research questions. Explain your original contribution. Report on the internal and external validity. Sample report in discussion. The study insists that the covariates of the variables of study be interpreted as causal relationships, more so when good measurement, design, and representative sampling are the keys to internal validity. However, these causal relationships may not be generalized to different measures, groups, persons, settings, and times. Compare your results with your expectations. Adduce reasons for the result of the data analysis. What phenomenon can you attribute the result to? Make a research claim through coherent arguments and critical thinking. 6.0 Conclusion and Policy Implications. What was learned? Conclusions. A short and precise concluding remarks that reinforce the originality of your work. It must relate to the problem and where they were met. Deductions or inferences from the major findings or results, to be drawn from chapters 2 and 4 above. Can we generalize? Conclusions must be drawn from findings, not from personal opinions. You must have conclusion for each of the objectives. E.g., conclusion for objective 1, conclusion for objective 2, and so on. Restate the objectives and show how your objectives were achieved and where achieved in the report. Limitations of the study. What prevents the perfection of your work? B. Implications of the findings, relevance, significance, and contributions of the findings to research, theory, practice, and society. Research, contributions to the body of knowledge. Practice, economic and commercial impacts, significance to teaching and influence on public policy. Society, influence on public attitudes and quality of life. Recommendations, who should do what? Practical recommendations for policy implementation of findings. You may recommend what needs to change, directing to specific organizations. Other recommendations based on conclusions. See recommendation for future work and further research. These are recommendations to other potential researchers on some aspects of the researcher's study or results of his study that can lead to further research by any other interested researcher. Addressing future studies indicate the currency of your work. It builds research problems for further studies. 7.0 References. What previous research was consulted? 8.0 Footnotes. 9.0 Appendices. Appendices are always included at the end of the paper. Graphs, charts, cover letters, questionnaire, interview guides, detailed explanation of statistical tests, tables, and other supplementary materials are also included at the end, in part due to changes that may take place when the paper is formatted for publication. Appendices should include only materials that are relevant, assist the reader in understanding the current study, and would make the body of the study robust. Actual raw data is rarely included in a research paper. Evaluation of the research. The research can be evaluated by triangulation in the following ways. A. Obtaining the opinion of experts in the field of study. B. Suitability and acceptability by the stakeholders. C. Using the mixed mode research method, quantitative approach to be validated with the qualitative approach. Thank you.